Mars, whose origins and future are incomprehensible to human minds, there spins a tiny planet, home to a variegated human family, curious, contentious, concerned about survival. Early on, answers to cosmic and to practical questions were supplied by authority figures, claiming connection with supernatural powers. But in time, blind faith was supplanted by rational thinking. Food for Thought Productions is pleased to present a proponent of the latter, Janet Horrigan, who teaches and advocates curricula inclusion of philosophy for children. Here she is with our producer, Lee Baker, to talk about her chosen mission.
Well, Janet, it's so nice to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And it's been so interesting. I heard you first speak of this topic at Ethical Culture meeting, and I understand that organization was instrumental in bringing philosophy for children onto the public scene.
Yes, originally in the 70s with Matthew Libman, yes. That's where he began, in the Ethical Culture Center in New York, actually.
Right. And he's a professor, is that correct?
Yes, he was. He's retired now, but he was.
I see. So when he started this, philosophy for children, that's not a new idea. When did that first come on the scene?
It started in the 70s. Matthew Libman began this movement in New York on the East Coast, and again with the Ethical Culture Society. And then it moved west in our country, up north in Seattle, Washington, and in Colorado. And we also have centers in now in Long Beach. Cal State Long Beach began this with our professor, Sarah Gehring, in philosophy.
So Long Beach University is the only California center.
As
is that
far as
correct?
I know, yes, this is true.
Right.
So Dr. Gehring started this a couple of years ago, right?
And that's the organization that you're affiliated with.
Right, that's CAPS. That stands for the Center for Applied Philosophy in Schools.
Right.
For children in schools.
Right. We'll talk about how that operates, how that is disseminated from the university to the schools in a minute. But why don't you just give a brief definition of the word? It sounds so...
Philosophy?
Right.
Oh, the love of wisdom. So it's very simple.
That's what that is. And so there are a lot of people who are confused. They think, well, that's something that's too complicated.
Especially for children.
For children and so forth. The person who started all of this, Professor Libman, he has a great explanation. You brought some video showing him.
Right.
Yes. Can we show the video of Dr. Libman, and then we'll talk some more.
Okay.
What we consider philosophy is an inquiry. It's an exploration of ideas, and it's a quest that follows a certain line of investigation, as a detective might follow a line of investigation. There's a spoor, there's a trace, there's something that you're looking for. And it doesn't mean you go straight. I mean, children in a classroom or philosophers will tack back and forth like a boat trying to go into the wind. They will go this direction, they will go that direction. But on the whole, they go forward. And that's the difference between philosophical dialogue and a mere conversation.
Well, that was really convincing, wasn't it? And inspiring, too. You were telling me this was started back in the early 70s.
Right, early 70s. And now, of course, it's also taken hold in Europe. The Scandinavian countries are using this method, as well as Australia, and Brazil is also very big in using this method.
And you brought some of the materials. In other words, there is a lot of material for those people who would be interested, such as...
Well, Matthew Libman intended for it to be a separate curriculum and to hold its own. But we, with the CAPS program in Long Beach, we have adapted it so that, or we have, we use it, the methodology, so that it can be adapted to the curriculum that is already in place, which makes it very nice because we often use the books that are already available to the children and their own
and
literature.
for source material.
Right, rather than
for the discussion.
Right, rather than
the
ordering
philosophical
special books.
discussions.
Yes.
So there is material, and I understand that more books are in the works and more materials,
Yes.
so that more people can learn how to do this. What is the training necessary or available?
Well, right now what we do is we invite the faculty and advisors to a workshop that is being held or that is held at California State University Long Beach and directed by Professor Gehring. And it's an intense 15-hour workshop where we train the instructors of the methodology and the process and so forth. And also on the East Coast, of course, the Montclair University there, or the New York State University at Montclair, and actually in New Jersey is where they hold the classes. And I was able to do that as well.
Oh, you went back there for some training?
Yes. Originally, I started with Professor Gehring here in Los Angeles, or in Long Beach, rather.
Long Beach University.
Yes, and then through the Ethical Culture Society and the American Ethical Union, we received a grant from the Stockenberg Fund, and which allowed me to participate in the actual course that was being taught on the East Coast.
And I know that you are promoting it to the public by going out and speaking about it and doing this program.
Right, right, and trying to inundate it into other programs that are already in existence, such as the Ethical Culture Society in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems such a wonderful thing. You also brought some tape of the children. You know, some of the objections to philosophy in early grades is, well, that's too
complicated, too academic.
It's not something children are ready for. In fact, we did a program with a young man who teaches in high school. His major was philosophy, and his minor was mathematics. Well, he wanted to teach philosophy, but he has to teach mathematics because the administration is saying, well, they'll get that in college.
Well,
that's way too late.
That is too late. I think it's too late, and several other people have the same idea. The children are natural philosophers. They do this naturally, and you can see that.
They have questions and they want to discuss things.
Yes, they are curious about the world and their place in it.
Right.
And so the questions come naturally, and it is never too late, or too early, rather, to begin the philosophical inquiry.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned too late, because I know a lot of adults could benefit.
No, and it's never too late either, that's right.
You brought some wonderful video material showing the children participating in philosophy class.
Yes.
So why don't we look at that?
Great.
Now, show that to the audience.
All right.
When you're thinking in philosophy, what's that like, Kevin? Or Stevie, you can go first.
It's fun.
Okay, what happens? Why is it fun?
That's because you learn more things and you're not so bored.
You're not so bored. Why are you not bored?
Because there's something to do. And you have a lot of things to do, and you can talk a lot.
You can talk a lot.
There's something to do. Talk, run, and think.
And
That's
think.
true.
Stevie, did you want to say something?
Yeah. In philosophy, you you learn other things because other people, then you learn from other people that know things that you don't know. But other people learn from you too.
Wow. So you get a chance to learn from other people and listen to other people, and they get a chance to listen to you. Anything else? What do you think, Lauren? What do you think about doing philosophy? Okay. One last, Stevie. Okay, quick. Quick.
Sometimes you learn what you already know.
Sometimes you learn what you already know.
Yeah.
Wow. That's something to think about.
Then you had some video. You had some of them 5 months later, with 5 months, just 5 months of experience?
Yes, after 5 months, because these children were considered low thinkers, and in 5 months they were able to catch up with their own peers.
I see. Okay. So let's see the progress in 5 months. We have that clip as well.
I can answer Lauren's question because she always thinks a lot. That's why she doesn't talk a lot.
Okay. Lauren?
She's thinking again. She's always thinking.
When they find themselves talking and being listened to by their peers, that's a very intoxicating experience, you see, and their self-esteem rises. And that's one of the things you want to happen in a classroom because there's a correlation between ability to learn and self-esteem. And many of the worst learners are people who have very low self-esteem, don't think that they could learn, don't think that they can think for themselves or just think.
I agree with Joanna because your brain is for learn and powerful.
So you agree with Joanna that your brain thinks, and you don't agree with Clarissa, who said it's you that thinks.
What Clarissa say?
She said it's you that thinks, not your brain. That is an interesting thing to say, Clarissa. It's a connection, you're right, Christian. Philip.
Well, I disagree with Clarissa because if you didn't have a brain, you wouldn't even be thinking about the word that I'm talking right now. So it would be impossible without your brain. I think it could be possible with your brain because you have a heart, and the heart can beat, and it can think that it's beating.
You think that
I disagree with Joanna and Adele.
Bradley?
And I disagree with Clarissa because you can have, if your heart beats, that's just your heart thinking. You don't know if your heart thinks.
Well, if that isn't convincing that children are capable of thinking and listening and
reasoning
expressing
through their thoughts
and
ideas.
And just wonderful. And what I thought was most important was this terrific friendly relationship between the teacher and the children, and it was really partnership learning.
Exactly. There's this cooperative learning taking place. It is a partnership rather than this dictatorship that is presently, for the most part, taking place in a lot of education today. Now you are co-learners with the student.
Right.
So that is quite a different attitude in the classroom. And
totally different.
The children respond differently.
Totally different. What is too often the case is what you have is a dictatorship where information is handed down, it's supposed to be accepted and fed back in the tests. That's not very good training or experience for a democratic society.
Not for future citizens who are to make their own decisions and think through their decisions later on in life.
Absolutely.
Or their own opinions.
Well, there is a lot of resistance to this, and those people who resist have very good reasons as far as they're concerned. And I was just wondering, have you personally had experience with a parent or a teacher who...
I personally have not, but my professor, Dr. Gehring, she tells of an incident where a woman was actually not interested in having her daughter think for herself, and actually expressed this and said that she was not interested in having her daughter think for herself, and of course she was removed from the program at the time. So there is resistance, and some instructors, even if they don't understand the methodology or the process yet, then they might be worried about this type of program, especially when they have a curriculum to get through and goals to reach by the end of the semester, so they're very worried about that.
They're pressured.
Yes, they are.
And there's no time allowed for the kind of thinking and thinking through
and allowing the
discussing.
child to express himself, and that takes time, a little extra time.
Right.
And to share those thoughts with their classmates and to create this, what is called a community of inquiry. Yes. So.
Exchange of information. One of the little boys said he could learn from others.
Yes.
And they could learn
and
from
they can
me.
learn from him. And that's the key, I think, that in this community of inquiry, you do share, and everyone has a turn. Everyone is able to express their thoughts and to reason their way through. They have to explain why they think what they do.
Yes.
And if you've noticed, they do that.
And I noticed they have to explain why they disagree.
Right.
And the little boy says,
Right.
I disagree with Mary
Yes.
because, and has reasons for that.
And we do give them the language with which to conduct the actual discussion. However, the thoughts are completely their own.
Yes,
So-
but there are skills and there is a framework
Yes.
that they can
Yes, sort of like a
work from. And
a
that
template that we give them.
Well, teachers haven't been taught this, apparently. They've been taught what is sometimes called regurgitation education.
right.
We fit it to you and you hand it back.
Right, so this helps to develop, of course, their critical thinking skills and some logic and language skills to be able to articulate what they are thinking, what is in their minds is very important, not just for their current education, but for the future as citizens.
Well, I had done a program with the superintendent of Ventura County Schools, and he cited a lot of studies because we were discussing the fine arts, music and theater and all this and that, which has been cut from the curriculum as a waste of time, as frills. But he had studies that showed that academically children do so much better when they have those creative opportunities.
Yes.
And when they have interesting classes, as you can see with those children.
Well, children learn, everyone learns through different pathways, and all of those ought to be explored, and the children ought to have an opportunity to explore them. And even in philosophy for children, we allow them some role playing, which they love to do, and drawing and music. So it isn't just all discussion, but
Right.
that is, of course, the predominant portion of
Right,
this discussion.
that's a really important. Those skills are really wonderful when you get out in the world and you're able to carry on a discussion with another person who may have different ideas. And if we could have more of that in the world, we'd have less war.
I would hope so, perhaps.
Well, it certainly would go a long way towards having a
Yes.
peaceful world.
Because that's another aspect that is a benefit, is that they learn tolerance.
Yes.
So they learn
Respect for
other
differing
people's
opinions.
right, and to take them to task. They take their classmates to task. Philosophy has a critical edge anyway.
Yes.
So when they're doing philosophy in the classroom, and this is what they do, they're not taught philosophy. This is what they do, and they do it naturally. Then they also ask each other to explain why
Why?
they have that opinion, for instance, or why they think that way.
Like I was saying, the favorite two questions with children are why or how come?
come.
And that's what they explore in a philosophical
Certainly,
discussion.
yes, and we do.
And so-
Yes, Lee, we do explain in the beginning the difference between a philosophical question, perhaps, and a scientific or a factual question,
Right.
so that they know the difference.
Right.
And
Well-
they explore that again on their own.
Yes. Now, one of the reasons parents have a problem, we mentioned the teachers have a problem because they're
They're
pressed for
pressured.
time. And they're expected to teach in a certain way.
Right.
Teach for testing,
Yes,
which doesn't test intelligence or
not always. Not
and
always.
just test for facts, but not how to do the kind of thinking that you
Critical
really
thinking.
do most of in life.
Yes, to get
Deal with different opinions.
beyond the surface, to dig
Yeah.
underneath a bit.
Right.
And well, our
one
our
of-
children are tested in the way that they write essays, and in their essays they have to support their thoughts. That's good.
Well, when I was in school, we had essay questions on tests. That's not done hardly at all. It's true or false or pick an answer.
Again, it's a time.
And so it's a whole different different system now, and we have to get back to giving children opportunity to figure out what they think and be able to express it.
And to talk about what is important to them in their lives today. Not necessarily, well, of course there's a certain part of education where we have to give them a foundation and what they need.
Well,
in
they
the
have to
curriculum,
learn
but-
to deal with factual information.
Right.
But also deal
But
with
it shouldn't
the
stop there, is what I'm trying to say.
different
Yes.
worldviews, different opinions, and they're both equally important, you see. in my opinion.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And they, for the most part, they don't have this part of the
So you're
education.
training people to be participants in a democratic society.
Actually,
But
yes.
as children, they don't live in a democratic society. In the home, it's more of a dictatorship. And so do you get into conversations about things
Well,
like that?
We do. In one of our sessions with the children, we discussed Toni Morrison's book, The Big Box.
Right.
And
Oh,
that's
yes.
about, we brought that, but that's about children who could not handle their freedom. And so their parents and their teachers put them in this box, or, well, I won't tell you the whole story, but from that wonderful story, the children began to talk about concepts of freedom, concepts of justice, and should there be rules, and why are rules important, and why do the parents have control over them, and at what age would be a good age, in their opinion, to have more freedom. And so it's very fascinating that these
the
concepts
conversation that flows
emerge
from
from
that.
a simple
So in other
story.
words, the box refers to the limitations. As a
Yes.
matter of fact, we all have some limitations when we live in a community, when we live in a society.
Yes.
Individuals are not free to do everything
Right,
they
right.
choose. So
But fortunately, in our country, now the box represents maybe limitations in physical limitations. And so even in the classroom, the children then begin to ponder about, are there other limitations beyond physicalities? For instance, we can think what we like. We're free to think what we like. We may not act the way we wish
may not be
all the
free to
time.
act on it.
Yes, but we can certainly think. And in our country, for the most part, we can speak what we like, although maybe sometimes that's not the case. But we explore all those areas. And
Right.
I'm just giving one example from one story.
Yes.
But
Well,
there-
this idea of the conflict between the individual and the society, and for a child, it's between the individual child and the family. By being able to discuss the reasons why there are some limitations, I think they probably find it easier to accept some limitations, and that they are going to be free when they're mature enough to handle more freedom. So that could be something that could be explained to parents.
yes. And a lot of their questions, so we do invite them to go home and talk to their parents about them, especially if we don't have time to cover them in the classroom. And that's always good to have those discussions.
Did you
at
ever
home.
think of having workshops for parents and workshops for teachers to get them understanding the benefits for them?
That's how we initially get the programs into the schools, is to invite the instructors, as I mentioned earlier, to the workshop. But we have not thought about parents, and I think, well, some of those teachers are parents, so perhaps in that respect it will get
seems
into
to
the
me
home.
that it would be really worthwhile to make clear to parents the advantages to them,
Right.
to be able to have these kind of discussions with their children and form the kind of bond between parents and children that often doesn't exist.
And to have that mutual respect in the dialogue, in form of dialogue. Quite often the children are faced with that dictatorship at home, as we mentioned earlier, or I am the parent, you are the child. But quite often the child, when given the opportunity to express their thoughts and their feelings at home, and I suspect this happens naturally in most, or maybe some homes.
Some cases.
Some cases. Well, then they develop this mutual respect for parent and child. And I think you mentioned earlier that bridge is very important to have.
Yes, because now it's too much separate children's world and adult world, and parents are wringing their hands and saying, well, what is going on with these children, and why is all the violence going on?
Well.
And it's because these children are bottled up and they can't express how they feel in a,
Right.
in a safe way.
Right, that's right. And if they learn to articulate their thoughts and their feelings, then we are making progress, I believe.
And so, well, I think we could go on and on, but
Yes,
I
we
think we've
can.
run out of time, and we'll have to do more with this later. But anyway, I want to thank you very,
Thank you
very
very much
much.
for having me.
Good.
We're convinced that optimum education for our children will require involvement of parents, mentors, and other members of the community. For more information about philosophy for children and how you can get it into your community school, contact the Center for the Advancement of Philosophy for Children at California State University in Long Beach. We hope you have found this program intellectually stimulating and that you will continue to investigate the ideas raised here. To connect with other like-minded individuals, please contact any of the dozens of free thought organizations, such as the American Humanist Association, American Atheists, the Center for Inquiry, and Atheists United. You may also email the producer directly via leebaker27@gmail.com. This program has been distributed through the courtesy of Atheists United.